Alright, for our next settings menu, I'd like to explain the use of the TCP IP tab in order to set up communications with your network in your pharmacy. So if I select my settings menu, skip login, and advance to the TCP IP setting, the fourth one down, it brings up there's only one choice on the menu. However, when you select that choice, it brings up all of the settings related to TCP IP. The default is DHCP for dynamic addressing. If you wanted to specify a specific static address, which is typically recommended in order to make sure that your icon's IP address doesn't move around, because once you establish communication with your pharmacy system, if you leave it a dynamic, your router could assign a new IP address to your icon down the road, and all of a sudden you wouldn't be able to communicate with your icon in a couple of months. So static is recommended for the long term. Dynamic is a very quick way to get an IP address. So if I select dynamic and hit set, then the icon goes out to the router and asks it to give it an IP address and a subnet mask and a gateway. All three of those items show up. They're all grayed out. You can't key them in when you're set for dynamic because the router is assigning those. The next setting is for the DNS, the domain name server. So we can specify auto DNS where your router just tells us where to translate an IP address to a domain name, and vice versa, or you can specify manual. If you're a large organization, some IT departments will want to specify a certain domain name server to be used, and you can specify that by clicking manual and then typing in the IP address in the box. When you press the set button, it copies all the settings from the left side to the right side, showing you what the current adapter settings are. Right now I'd like to go ahead and disconnect my Ethernet cable from the icon, and you'll notice without a connection you will see 0.0.0.0 if you're set for dynamic, because it's trying to get an IP address from your router and the router's not giving it one because you're not connected to it. So if you see that on your icon, you probably aren't connected, and you need to just check your connections and make sure that you're hooked up. Okay, next I'd like to explain how you can use the static setting in order to specify the settings you'd like to use for your pharmacy. So refer to your IT support to give you an IP address that you should be using. But the way I like to do it is you select your dynamic address, and that gets you into the right range of IP addresses that are used within your network. But then you can change it to static and click the keypad, and now you can just change the last octet of your 4-octet IP address and backspace over that and change it to whatever you want it to be, because typically the first three numbers are the same in a given network and the last number identifies the specific device. So if I change that to 130, because 130 is the range of IP addresses that are statically allocated in my particular network, then I can specify that and press OK. Now once I've done that, the subnet mask of 255.255.255.0 is the most common setting, but if you want, you can change that according to what your IT department requires. And the same with the gateway. It automatically gets the gateway when we're in the dynamic setting. If you want to change it, you can, but typically the one that's specified automatically or given by the router in the DHCP setting will be the correct one, and you don't have to change anything there. And lastly, the DNS, we already explained that, and that works the same regardless. It allows you to manually specify it or automatically get it from the router. So now once I've made all those settings, I can press set, and now it copies those settings over to the left-hand side, and those are now in use on your icon. If I press exit, save, now it's saved those settings, and we've completed your TCP IP settings for your icon network settings.